Hello and welcome back, everyone. This is Jennifer McGuire, and I'm very thankful you are here. So today is one of those videos where I went a little overboard and made way too many cards. So it's a longer video, but I hope you'll watch it because I share lots of tips for using patterned paper to do stamped paper piecing. So this is a great way to use up scraps, any scraps at all, especially patterned papers. I know many of us hoard pattern papers and very infrequently use them. So by using them with your stamps, you get a new life out of the papers and your stamps. So I have some tips for you on how to make the pattern papers work for stamped images, a few different tips, and lots of cards to share. The best part about this, you can use these techniques with any pattern papers or stamps. So it's a great way to extend your products. For my cards, I'll be using 6x6 pattern papers. The reason I'm doing so is I find that the smaller patterns on 6x6 papers are better for card making, but you can use 12x12 if that's what you have. I usually use my 12x12 pattern papers to make my own envelopes, and I'll link to a video here describing that. Now, the 6x6 pattern papers that I like the most are from Sunny Studios, Honeybee Designs, Lawn Fawn, My Favorite Things, and a few others. But you'll see those are the brands that I use most today. I just like that they offer patterns that are tone-on-tone, subtle patterns like the one you see here. So it's something that you can stamp on and use without it being too distracting. Another fun line, by the way, is Doodlebug, and I'll link to all those below. So I'm going to try to do a few different type of pattern paper examples today so you can see ways to use them along with your stamping. I do use a lot of Sunny Studio pattern papers today. The reason is these are double-sided and there's a lot of tone-on-tone patterns. So that seems to be one that I reach for a lot, and there are many different options, different colors available. Even the ones that have multicolored patterns, the other side is tone-on-tone, so you have that option too. I also really like from Sunny Studio their pattern paper pack that has all light grays, and I will be using that in today's video, so you'll see that a little bit later. Now, the technique today is to do your stamping on your pattern paper and then cut it out and piece it together on your card. It's a fun alternative to coloring. Coloring is something that makes me very anxious and I'm not very good at it. So this is a great way to add color to your card, but you just use pattern papers. Here's my first example, and you can see all of the stamping is done on pattern paper. So for this, I used the Memory Box Friendship Floral Heart stamp set. This is a 6x8 stamp set with a large floral heart image that I'll use on some of my cards. And then you can see the smaller floral image on the left that I'll use on a few of my other cards. I'll also use a few of the nice sentiments on this. I picked this image because it has those large flowers so the pattern can show through, and images that are easy to fussy cut. I went through my patterned paper collection and just grabbed some different ones that I could use to make multiple cards. So I'm going to end up making, I think, 5 cards with this first round of stamping. These two here are from Lawn Fawn, and I thought those would be fun multicolor pattern papers that I could use for the large flower images. Using my Misty stamping tool, I'm stamping these images with Altenew Obsidian Black ink. This is a pigment ink that will allow me to add clear embossing powder so that we'll have a raised black image. I really want to make sure that I get a dark black solid image. That will help define the edges on this pattern paper even more. By adding that heat embossing, the clear heat embossing, it'll make it even darker and it'll make it stand out with that little bit of shine and dimension. This is something that I think really makes a big difference when you're stamping on pattern paper. I want to save the extra pattern paper on the side here, so I'm going to cut off those strips because I can use them on a scraps card, and I'll link to a video that talks about creating cards using your scraps. So now I'm going to use my scissors to fussy cut out the large flowers in this image. So I'll have these pattern paper large flowers. I enjoy fussy cutting. I find that it doesn't take too long. It doesn't have to be perfect at all. And it's a little therapeutic. So I went ahead and cut out each flower from this pattern paper. I also black heat embossed the same images on some other pattern papers, but these are a little more tone on tone. So we have this light green stripe. Then I have a darker green polka dot, and then I have this peach plaid. So you can use up any scraps that you may have. From the peach plaid images, I'm going to cut out those little berries. If you want to save time, you could just use a marker or gemstones or Nuvo drops or something to color those berries, but I thought it'd be fun to use the pattern paper. Now I did cut out this large floral heart from the darkest green pattern paper. That's got some dots on it. It wasn't dark enough. So one of the things you can do to change your pattern papers or to tone them down, kind of mute them a bit, is to ink them up. I used my ergonomic brush from Pink & Main to easily apply some green ink to this to make it a little bit darker. Now it's time to do our paper piercing. I'm going to use liquid glue and piece in all the different pieces that we cut out. Now here you see me gluing in some leaves. I had heat embossed the same images on a lighter green striped pattern paper, and I cut out some of the larger leaves. You can pick and choose what you want to piece. Now I'm just gluing them onto this darker green pattern paper heart that we created. I'm using foam adhesive to add the flowers on top too, and these are the ones that we created from that plaid lawn fawn pattern paper. So you're just going to go ahead and put all these pieces together. It's really fun. It's kind of like putting together a puzzle. And the best part is, this doesn't even have to be close to perfect. You just want to add some color here and there. I did a few berries in the peach, and I did do the large main flowers. Before you know it, you will have your arranged image as you see here. And I actually have that small little flower cluster also from the same stamp set. Now at this point, I didn't find that my flowers were standing out enough. They seemed to kind of wash out to me. So this is one of the things you can do to your pattern paper images, is to add a little ink to the edges. I have just started using this iCrafter mini blending brush. Check this out. They look like little sponge daubers, but the tips are actually a brush, just like the blending brushes we love so much, but they're smaller. You can hold them with your finger, or you can hold them as a pencil. You just hook them all together, and you can see how they stack together nicely and are easy to store. It comes with all of these together in one set, so you can have one for each color, so you don't have to clean in between. So having the smaller brush is perfect for getting into the nooks and crannies on these small images. I started out by using the mini blending brush to add Hero Art's Butter Bar yellow ink to the tips, so you can see me doing that here. But I decided that was a little too orangey, so I decided to add some pale tomato ink to that too. And that has a little bit of a peachish red to it. So I end up with kind of an orange tint to this. Now, you could use sponge daubers to do this, definitely. The reason I have recently switched to using this is I found that my sponge daubers had kind of an expiration date. I would use them a lot and use them hard, and they would kind of pill up on the end. And I actually just replaced all of mine. But I found that this worked really well. It was my favorite find at the Creativation craft show, and I found it works perfect for getting into little nooks and crannies with a little bit of ink blending. So that's why you see me using this today. I also like how they stack. It makes it easy to use. So on some of the flowers, I only did the pale tomato ink, so it has a little bit of a peach. So I have this little bit of color just in the outside edges, and you can see how it defines the edges of those flowers more and makes them stand out more. So if you have a pattern paper that's very busy, you can give it a little more definition by putting ink only in the edges. Or if it's way too busy, you could just ink up the whole thing to mute it down a bit to whatever color you want. Now here's another example I did. I have like a wood grain, dark green pattern paper on the background. Then I have a gingham plaid green for the leaves that I added. And here is a lawn fawn floral yellow paper. It is white with yellow flowers. This was one that really made a big difference, adding some yellow ink to the edges. I'll show a comparison here. You can see this one that I've inked up. And here's a flower that I haven't inked up. And see how the one that's inked stands out a bit more? It just adds a little more color to the project. I think it makes a big difference to add that ink to the edges. And again, you can use whatever inking tool you may have. So when I did this paper piecing, most of it was glued flat all together, but I did pop the flowers to give some dimension. So be sure to pop some of your paper piecing so it stands out a bit. Now here's my third example using this image. This time my flowers are in this peach gingham paper, so it's peach and white. And I thought it was really helpful to add that pale tomato ink to the edges. You'll see a difference between the two flowers here. This one I inked up, and that one to the left I didn't ink up. And you can see how it really defines the edges and makes it pop so much more against the background. We have a lot of patterns here, so it's good to have that definition to make it all stand out. So on all of these floral images, I didn't use any cardstock. I used only pattern paper and a lot of scraps. Okay, so let's go ahead and assemble some of these cards. Here I'm using my Tailored Expressions rectangle masking stencil to help me center my sentiment. This stencil has guidelines for an A2 card, so I'm lining up the guidelines, they're engraved on the stencil, with the outside edge of the card. And that makes a smaller window in the center there where I can center my sentiment and make sure I get perfect placement in the center. It's so much easier than eyeballing it. By the way, this note card is a white note card that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I have some Sunny Studios light gray pattern paper on top of that. So you can see behind the flower is actually a soft gray pattern paper. That Sunny Studios soft gray pattern paper pack is my favorite, and I use it a lot in this video. You can see I also added some iridescent gemstones from Lucy's cards onto some of the berries in the background just for a little bit of dimension and a little bit of sparkle. For the sentiments on these cards, I just dug through my stash and looked for a set that I hadn't used a particular sentiment from, something that I thought was really special. And my first one is from this Concord and Ninth stamp set. I really liked that message and thought it was great for this card. By the way, I did stamp on my matching envelope, and that image is from this Honeybee Love Enclosed stamp set, and I actually stamped all of today's envelopes using this set. I like sets like this with greetings that are perfect for our envelopes. We spend a lot of time on our cards, so it's nice to make the envelope special too. Here's the other card that I made with the yellow flowers. On this one, I did a soft gray floral pattern paper behind it, and that is again from that light gray Sunny Studios paper pack. You can see it there. And then I stamped all the hugs at a diagonal along the heart, and that ended up being my favorite of the three. You can also see those iridescent gemstones and how they add some dimension and sparkle. This time I had the heart offset to the left just for a shakeup of the design. When I make several cards with the same images, I like to change the design up a bit for something different. Now that sentiment is from this Waffle Flower Here For You stamp set that has a lot of very special sentiments for somebody who needs encouragement, such as holding you in my heart, all the hugs, I wish I could be there for you, and keeping you in my prayers. So my third pattern paper heart example is this one here. The background is a gray and white pattern paper from Lawn Fawn. And you can see how I have subtle pattern papers for the leaves, but then that fun peach and white one for the flowers. So it's fun to mix and match different things together. If you want to go bold with a more bold pattern paper, I do think inking the edges does help. Now the sentiment on this one is from Concord and Ninth So Happy stamp set, which I've used in a video before, but really any sentiment would work great with this image. I also have the smaller flowers that I created with my leftover pieces, and I kept the card design simple for these. For the background, I used the Honeybee Fluttering Hearts dies. Now there is the Fluttering Heart die, which is in my left hand, and in my right hand is the Fluttering Hearts Pierce die. They can be used separately or used together. You just layer them up. So I did white cardstock from both, and I layered them on my note card, and check out that fun background. Here you can see the pierced hearts inside of the open hearts, and it's just a great background. Now for my flowers, I did die cut a square yellow pattern paper dot paper and then stamped Thinking of You on it and matted it with black cardstock, and then added the flower with some gemstones to the center. This design here is a great way to use up small pattern paper scraps with any floral image or any image that has some large open space to it so you can see the pattern. Here's my yellow version, and I did the exact same thing, same background, same sentiment, which is from the Memory Box Floral Heart stamp set, and the same light yellow polka dot pattern paper. So for these cards, I did the heat embossing on a bunch of different pattern papers, and I took them in a bowl with some scissors, and I went upstairs, and while my kids were doing their homework, I just did all my fussy cutting, and then I came back downstairs to assemble them. It's a great way to make a lot of cards at once. Okay, my next example has a lot less cutting, and it shows that you can even use pattern papers for cute little critter cards. And surprisingly, I think this is my favorite of all of today's cards. For this one, I used the My Favorite Things Birthday Buds stamp set. I just got this and couldn't wait to use it. I thought the elephant and the little bunny would be perfect to use with pattern paper. Again, you want to use an image that shows enough of the pattern, so you don't want anything too small and detailed. So I went through my scraps. Again, these happen to be Lawn Fawn pattern papers, and I am stamping with the black pigment ink. And sometimes I like to double stamp it just to make sure it's super dark, solid black. Then once I've stamped it, I go ahead and use my ultra fine clear embossing powder, and that will darken it up even more and give it that raised shine dimension. Here I'm stamping the elephant on blue pattern paper. I'll cut out the hat from that. Then I'll stamp the little bunny on pink striped pattern paper, and I will cut out the flowers from that. So basically, you stamp the different images on different pattern papers and cut out different elements to piece together. This is that Sunny Studios gray paper pack, and I thought that would be perfect for our little bunny. It just has little subtle polka dots on it. Okay, so now it's time to do fussy cutting, and I'll just cut different parts of the images from the different pattern papers. You can see how the pattern papers kind of all go together, but you'd be surprised. They don't have to be the perfect match. You can make them work together very easily and even ink them up if you want. Here I have a white background that I cut with that Honeybee Fluttering Hearts Pierced die. I thought it'd be a fun background. I'm stamping my little elephant and my little bunny exactly where I want them on my card with that black ink, and then I'll add my clear embossing powder. Really doesn't matter how well this stamps. I'm stamping on texture. It doesn't matter. This is really just a guide for us to paper piece our pattern papers on top of. Since I have so many different patterns here on these small pieces, I think it's important to ink up the edges. Last time I used color to do so. Usually when I do paper piecing with pattern papers, I just ink the outer edge only using a little blending brush like this or a sponge dauber, and some Hero Arts soft granite ink, which is a nice light gray. So basically it's just kind of creating a shadow around the edges, and it doesn't matter what color pattern paper it is, that light gray works with it. So any light gray ink would work. You just add that ink right onto the edges and check how it gives a nice definition to each of the different pattern papers. I like that iCrafter mini blending brush set actually has one for gray, so it's perfect for this. Okay, so now it's time to just do our little puzzle. We're going to piece all of our pattern papers together. I have my little flowers that I cut out for on top of the bunny, and there we have our cute little image. I did add some yellow pearls to the center of the flowers on the bunny and to the top of the elephant's hat. I matted our little white piece there with all the images onto a scrap of blue pattern paper. And then I added that onto a white note card where I have a piece of gray pattern paper on it. And that's from the Sunny Studios gray paper pack. There you can see all the little details. We have the little dotted hearts in the background. We have our different pattern papers. We did the inking on the edge to give that definition. And I'm just crazy about using pattern papers for images like this. It was so much fun and a great way to use up small scraps. Now that sentiment is from this Concord and Ninth tiny tag-along stamp set. I just cut the sentiment apart so I could stack the words "You're My Happy" on top of each other, and I stamped it directly on the background. I had so much fun making that last cutesy card that I thought I would do another. This time I picked very simple images again because we want it to be easy to cut out. And these are from My Favorite Things Let's Stick Together stamp set. This set has been sitting on my desk waiting to be used for some time now. I just thought the images were super cute. Once again, I dug through my scraps drawer and I found some pattern paper scraps. The bottom one is from Lawn Fawn and the top one I believe is from Honeybee. I am once again clear heat embossing my black stamping so that it'll stand out even more. I will cut out one of the cactus from this pattern paper, the one here, but I need to stamp it on another pattern paper to cut out the other. And I decided to use this more bold floral pattern paper from Lawn Fawn. It's hard to see the image here, but I'll share another trick with you to give it some definition so you can really see the image at the end of our card. Now it's time to do our fussy cutting. Again, I picked images that would be really easy to cut out. Now, if you don't like cutting out, you could use a coordinating die, but you would definitely have that white trim. I think it's best to do the fussy cutting. Now this time, instead of inking up the edges, I thought I'd show you another option, and that is to use a light gray marker to go around the outside edge of your image. So here I'm using Copic markers in C2 and C4, but you could use any light gray marker or even colored pencil to do this. So you can see how it gives a nice definition to the outside of your stamped image. Basically, you're just creating some shadows to make it stand out even more. Adding this little bit of gray marker doesn't take much time, but makes a really big difference. Okay, so I took the same image and I black heat embossed it on a blue pattern paper that's very subtle. It's like a speckled pattern paper from Lawn Fawn. I have my sentiment on there too. I'm using my mini blending brush to add some turquoise sea ink kind of as a cloud around our stamped image. It'll make it stand out even more and kind of draw the attention to it. So after I added that inking, we can do our paper piecing right on top. Sorry my head gets in the way here, but for this example, I glued everything flat onto our background. I didn't use any foam tape, but you could if you wanted dimension. After assembling, I matted this blue piece with white cardstock. I want to make it look like I'm tying a bow of jute around the top of it. This is my favorite way to do it. I think it gives better results. I just wrap the jute around the front and tape the ends on the back. Then we'll add a bow to the front a little bit later. But first I want to add some dimension behind this piece. So I cut a piece of white craft foam to be slightly smaller, and I'm gluing it to the back. And then I'll glue this onto our card. I have a white note card here with some gray polka dot pattern paper. Actually, it's heart pattern paper from Sunny Studio. And I'm going to put a dot of liquid adhesive on the jute that we've wrapped around the front. And I'll glue a bow right on there. So it looks like we wrapped it around and tied a bow, but this way we can get our bow to be just right. To make the eyes on my image stand out even more on the pattern paper, I used my black glaze pen just to make them a little bit larger and add that shine and dimension. You can see I also stamped 3 little hearts and cut them out and added to our background, and added a little yellow pearl to the center of the flower. So you can see the different pattern papers that we mixed and match, but because we gave it that little bit of definition with the gray pen and that blue ink on the background, it all stands out nicely and is a great way to use up your scraps to paper piece a stamped image together. Okay, my last examples is actually a large set of cards. This is how I really make cards in real life. I make a bunch of them at once. These are all going to go to every teacher at a local school. So I decided to make a ton at once, put a lot of time and care into them, and I used my stamped pattern paper piecing technique on them. So for this, I used the Honeybee Brilliant Day stamp set. This is another one that I've been really wanting to use. I think it is such a great set with fun sentiments, and you have the line of crayons and the line of pencils. And the nice thing is these are very easy to cut out to do this paper piecing technique. So I went through my pattern papers and I grabbed a bunch of subtle pattern papers in a rainbow of colors. Most of these are Sunny Studio pattern papers, but there are some from, I believe, Honeybee and Lawn Fawn in here too. So really just grab what you have. You could even stamp your own tone-on-tone papers if you don't have pattern papers. So if you like to color, you could definitely color in the pencils, but I really like doing this fun technique of paper piecing. So here's how I went about making all of these cards. I lined up the pencil image and the crayon image right up against the side of my pattern paper so I could use that leftover on the right when I'm done for something else. So I'm going to stamp this with that Altenew Obsidian black pigment ink and then clear emboss them like I did before. And I will do this on all of the different pattern papers that I showed you. I think there were 13 different pattern papers. I'd stamp one and add the embossing powder and set it aside. Stamp another, add the embossing powder and set it aside. And then heat set a bunch of them at once. This just makes the process go by faster, and when you're making a lot of cards, you want to save that time. Now the pencil image, I also heat embossed on wood paper. This is just like a light birch wood paper, and I thought it'd be fun for the pencil part to be made from this. Now I did the crayon here. I didn't need to do that image on this. I ended up just heat embossing the pencils on several pieces of wood paper so that I could paper piece with that along with the pattern paper. Then I went and I cut out all of these. It doesn't take long. It's just 4 quick cuts on each. I like doing this. I did take this upstairs and I watched a couple documentaries while doing so, and I just find it very peaceful to do. The crayons are easy. You just cut them out from the pattern paper. For the colored pencils, I stepped up a little bit because that's just what I tend to do. I cut out my wood pencil first. Then I cut out my pattern paper pencil and I cut off the tip of the pattern paper and the, I don't know what you call it, the barrel of the pattern paper, and I glue those on to my wood piece. So this took me a little bit of time to do with all those colored pencils, but I had the help of Lila, so I was able to get them all done to make lots of cards. So you can see it really doesn't take that long at all. So I assembled all of my pencils and I have all of my crayons, and I actually just kept them sorted in a little ice cube tray. I just found that was an easy way to do it. I was using plastic bags at first that I could recycle to protect some cards later on, but then I ended up switching to the little ice cube tray. I thought that was very handy to do. So now I have lots of crayons and lots of pencils to make lots of cards. And I assume right now is when you all think that I've lost my mind to do all this, but I enjoy it. Okay, now here I am stamping on a light gray pattern paper, the pencils along the bottom edge. I stamped it with a very light gray ink because I only use that as a guide to glue my paper pieced pencils on top. Then I shift down to the bottom of my MISTI and I stamp a sentiment with the black ink, and then I'll clear heat emboss that. I like to add 2 different images in the MISTI, one on the top and one on the bottom. It saves me a lot of time when I'm mass producing because I can stamp on the top, then stamp on the bottom. After I did that on a bunch of different gray, subtle gray pattern papers, it's time to add our adhesive behind it. If you want to save time, you could use just regular liquid adhesive or tape runner, but I tend to overdo things, so I'm using foam tape. So I cut the foam tape to be a little narrow and then cut it to a really quick tip on the end to kind of fit behind each of the crayons. And then I went and added all my crayons. You can see how they hang off the edge, but once I have them all lined up, I can go back and trim off the excess. So I did a little rainbow along the bottom. Here we can trim off the extra that's hanging off the bottom. Excuse that black stamping on the back. You can ignore it. That was a change of plans that I did. And now we can glue this onto a white note card. This gray piece I trimmed down to be a little less than 4 inches tall by 5.5, so that a little white trim shows at the top and the bottom when we add it to a 4.25 by 5.5 inch note card. On the crayons, I did a little bit of glossy accents on the tips of the crayons just to give it some shine, and added black marker to the stripe on the crayon wrappers. So there you can see the completed card. You have the shine on the tip of the crayon and all the different colorful pattern papers on each of the crayons. This one I think is definitely worth the effort, and hopefully the teachers will like them. I assembled the pencil cards in the exact same way. I just added them onto foam tape strips, and I put a little bit of glossy accents just on the tip of the pencils. So you can see that wood paper, a little bit of shine on the tip, and the fun colorful pattern papers. And by the way, on a few of the cards, I did use a different sentiment that says, "You add color to my world," so I would have some to give to friends too. I hope the variety of cards that I shared with you today demonstrate that you can use your pattern paper scraps with different stamped images to do paper piecing, to get new life out of your products. I hope you'll give it a try. I got to go finish all those teacher cards with Lila now, so I better get going, but I did want to mention that I have my supplies in my YouTube description below. And I have links to a couple other videos there that talk a little bit about using pattern paper scraps on your cards. Thanks so much for spending this time here with me today. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again soon.